Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of mind blowing to think about that, right? But also, I think the way you framed it, that it's kind of always in your mind, you already get how this works. It's just that you now have resources that you didn't have available to you before, right? So I think about like a sales guy having all the insights in the world. That's kind of like President Kennedy had the daily brief brought to him, which like every day they said, this is everything we know that's going on in the world, right? Every single day. So that was possible in 1960, right?
That's right.
Now that's possible for
Elbow
every
grease.
single sales opportunity that every sales executive has.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Exactly
So
right.
it's right. So,
But is it
but
going
what
to
does he do with
change the
that?
way, like, is the bot going to go flying out on a, on a drone and talk to your customer and close the sale? No.
No.
Nothing's going to change from that perspective. The fundamentals of your business are not going to change overnight. So that's the thing that we have to make sure that we think clearly about.
Yeah, and I think also another, I think the metaphor of like imagine you're managing like a major claim, right? And you said that you have 1,000, support staff, virtual support staff to help do that. Now imagine just letting those virtual support staff go talk to someone who's been injured or like that could be a catastrophe. I mean,
That would be the catastrophe.
that could be an
Exactly.
absolute catastrophe. But managing it responsibly, which every company already has to have structures in place to manage any new enablement responsibly. So this is no different, I think, is one of the
No
takeaways.
different.
Right.
It's no different. I'll tell you another client. Um, they do a lot of analytical work. It's a insurance company. Do a lot of analytical work to price things, to determine when something bad is likely to happen. Those types of things. A lot of AI ML work that had been going on, but they had been in controlled silos in the organization. And what this has done is it's brought a whole new dimension of now where there were 5, 10 groups that were doing these analytical models and this machine learning and AI. Now every group wants to do it, right? And so the model risk management framework of that company needs to change to be able to account for the volume. But the process that was used to manage the model risk on one thing, that process is going to be able to be extended to the broader need of the company. It's just the volume is going to go up. And so you're
Yeah.
going to need a central team. You need a central platform. You're going to want to reuse things. When you had 5 things, maybe you didn't need to reuse them. But if you got 35 things or 3,500 things, now you might need to reuse some of those components, and being able to manage that effectively will be important. A lot
Yeah.
of these things about what an enterprise needs, very different from some cool prompt that, you know, changes the fonts on your resume for you on LinkedIn or something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
like, there's some great content out there, like really cool stuff that when I go through it, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, right? Look at what the newest version of DALI or the newest video generation software can do.
Yeah.
All great stuff, but how you change your process inside of an enterprise is a little bit different thought process to go through that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of parallels to like when the web first came around, and both in terms of how people are reacting to this new technology, and then also how it's likely to play out. So, for instance, like in 1995, I think when Java first came out, people were saying, "Cool, you can do these animated flaming logos with it." Which shout out to animated flaming logos; they're pretty cool,
We
right?
still use them.
Right. We still use it, but that's not really what Java was doing to the enterprise, right? And
Right.
the other thing is there was sort of like two schools of thought in the 90s. There was a school of thought, this will change nothing, right? On one extreme, and the other extreme is this is going to change everything overnight. And they were both wrong, right? To your
Yeah.
to your point about how so the takeaways for AI means number one, you can't stay the same. You have to reinvent yourself with AI in your DNA. That's a must. And number two is, but not overnight, right? that if you look at the web, the real transformation of, the webs first started kicking off in 1994. The real transformation happened after the dot-com crash in like 2002, 2003 was when really some of that stuff started to stick. So when you think about AI, okay, you need to take a sober view towards this, but you also need to understand that if there are capabilities that can change the game by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude or more, you can't pretend like that's not a thing.
That's right.
You need to figure out, how do we responsibly bring that into our organization and reinvent ourselves with the emergent capabilities that we now have because of this new technology.
Yeah. And build it on top of the fundamentals that we already have in the organization. We've been around for 100 years. Can we build it on top of those foundational capabilities and those people management skills and those measurement methods and those types of things, right?
Exactly.
How can we do that rather than kind of throwing everything out with the bathwater? If anybody
Exactly.
tells you you need to completely change the way you're doing everything and turn it into all agile and this and that, they haven't done it. They're a consulting firm. They haven't done it,
Yeah.
right? You look at the biggest, baddest consulting firms, you know what they've done to date? They've taken their little knowledge portals where they upload all the customer projects that they've done in the past. They've slapped AI on it to make it a better search tool.
Yeah.
And at best, they might pull some of the pages from those PowerPoint presentations and create a new PowerPoint presentation. That's the extent
Yeah.
of what these people who are experts in transforming your company into an AI company, that's the extent of what they've done for themselves. Right.
So
So
yeah.
take all that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, no, definitely be careful, right? So if the game is reinvention, and on the output side of this reinvention, you're a 2.0 or 3.0 version of the company that you already are, right? Step one is not to take all of your values and throw them all in the trash can and do whatever shiny object is thrown your way, right? Step one is to really reflect, to do this, do this combination of innovations you can experiment to kind of figure out how this stuff works, but then also to combine that with the essence of what you are as a company and the value and the brand and what relationship you have with your customers, to ask yourself, how can we further our values because of these technologies? Not how can we suddenly become something completely different than we were yesterday.
Right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And that is a really nice synthesis, because if you think about the most insidious thing that's going to happen, no one's ever going to be able to convince you. They're going to try. They're not going to be able to convince you to throw everything out.
Mhm.
Right. What they will be able to convince you to do, and these could be internal people or external people, is build these little use cases.
Mhm.
Like, hey, how about we help your salespeople do a better job? How about we help your call center be more effective? And you'll do these little use cases that are supposed to be experiments, but they will become hardened parts of your operations over time.
Yeah.
And if those are not executed, if those are executed in a vacuum and they're not executed with the right governance and controls, you're creating opportunity for chaos in terms of risk and compliance.
Yeah.
If those are executed as quick wins underneath the vision and the coalition that we're talking about, then you're proving that portions of the vision can work, and you're managing it with the right resources, with the right buy-in, and you're not going down that 18% improvement individual's path who
Yeah.
missed somebody on their
Yeah.
coalition, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a really interesting way to frame this, right? And so we talked before about compounding. Compounding is going to happen whether you like it or not when it comes to AI, like anything else, right?
Yeah.
Number one, compounding can go in either direction. It can go up and reinvent your company in a way that's going to be much better than before, or it can insidiously go down and slowly destroy your company from when you didn't even see it coming. That's
Yeah.
how compounding can work. What's interesting about transformational technologies like AI is they compress that compounding curve. and they make it happen in the matter of months or years and not decades. So you've got to get it right and you've got to be deliberate about it. Now, I think the most interesting parallel that I can think of is years ago, I was in a class at Sloan and they were talking about information technology, right? And they said, well, how has it turned out? What's the ROI of it? IT was the hot thing back then, right? So what's the business case for it? And what they found is over looking across the Fortune 500, I think they looked at 50 Fortune 500 companies, average ROI of 0%, plus or minus
Zero
100%.
point
Yeah, it
zero
was literally
zero.
an average ROI on investments in technology. And companies already spent tons of money on technology at this point. This was the early 90s.
Yeah.
Average ROI of 0%, but plus or minus like 100% or 200. It was some crazy deviation, which is
Yeah.
effectively describing this compounded curve. And what they found is when companies had access to all of these new IT resources at their disposal, the companies that were deliberate and saw the opportunity and were very methodical had massive outsized returns from it. And the ones that just went in like a chicken with their head cut off and just started executing IT everywhere automated their disaster. They basically they were on a path to disaster and they got there much quicker because of the IT.
Yeah.
AI is this times 10.
It really is. And you maybe don't even have to go back that far. Look at digital,
Mm.
right? Digital transformation was a massive initiative. Billions, maybe trillions of dollars have been poured into digital transformation because everybody was worried about what happened to Target or Kohl's by Amazon is going to happen to my industry,
Mm.
right? Um, it didn't work out that well. Literally, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the statistics, 80% of digital transformation initiatives failed, did not achieve the goals that they had originally set out to do. Why? Because they didn't think about the vision, pushing it down, building that coalition, and then driving those three elements we talked about. What's that governance piece? What is the strategy and funding? How do you prioritize and fund these things and set them up for failure and success? And then lastly, how do you change the ways of working, but measure the outcomes, right? No, don't just throw a bunch of agile teams at it. Measure the outcomes. The ones that did that succeeded
Yeah.
exactly like you said, right? 100% or negative 100%. The ones that didn't I know of companies who have spent a ridiculous amount of money. I won't get into the numbers, but hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm.
And they have not successfully delivered iota of earnings improvement from that.
Wow. And
Can you
and
imagine that? And others have spent $80 million and delivered, one company delivered an 11% improvement in earnings per share. Spent $80 million a year.
and I think of this organizationally, right? Imagine the cynicism that seeps into a company that just spent hundreds of millions of dollars and didn't make any progress. That's disastrous from a morale perspective. And versus imagine the company that just spent tens of millions of dollars and got a massive return off of that. The momentum that that creates in the organization that's possible. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
just amazing to think about.
That's right. And you don't even think about in that hundreds of millions of dollars scenario, that money came from somewhere. So all the other business units were starved for digital investment over the years that these guys spent their hundreds of millions of dollars in this one business unit. So all the other business units actually fell behind, right?
Yeah.
What they would normally have spent in technology or digital.
Yeah.
So that triples the cynicism. Is not only were we not able to pull this off, not only did we spend all this money, but I didn't get to invest what I needed to invest to keep my business competitive.